connecting. There we go. All right, welcome to week 5. I almost said week 6. I'm ahead of myself there. Thank you all for coming to the Huddle session. I'm going to start sharing my screen with you. I just ask that you mute, except for Wes. Can you tell me if you see my screen?
Yes, I see your screen, ma'am.
Okay, so that's great. So what I have in front of us now are the table of contents for the project. And I want to talk about a few things tonight. The first thing we're going to talk about is the scope of the project and what's expected. We're going to talk about what you should be researching and how you should be researching. And then we're going to kind of spiral out into how, once you get the research that you need, how do you put those quotes into the paper that you're writing. At any time during the recording, during the huddle, I should say, stop me if you have a question. Don't be afraid to interrupt. That's perfectly fine. So this week, we're working on the first milestone, which is the topic selection pre-writing and perspective summary. This assignment will guide you through topic selection as you choose a current issue. And as we just talked about, some of you have already decided what that issue is going to be. You're going to determine a unique angle that's suitable for your essay's focus. If you don't remember, early in the course, back in week 1 or 2, we talked about angle and perspective. What's your unique insight into traveling to Mars or gun control or teachers' pay, whatever it is that you've selected as your topic. In addition, you'll be required to think through different positions within the topic to solidify and share your unique angle and perspective. And by that, you are going to consider what are the counter arguments. You know, if you think of the essay in your position as an argument, well, how can people argue against you? Why shouldn't you travel to Mars? What are the dangers? What are those things that you don't want to hear because they kind of talk you out of your point? Should teachers be paid a certain amount of money? Well, why aren't they paid that money? Why do people argue against it? You have to consider both sides before you can adequately write your side. So in all, you're going to have a 5-page essay, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit and what the other requirements are. I'm going to switch. Yep. Hi, Janae. Did somebody have a question? Okay. I'm going to switch for a moment to a video. I think I have to disconnect my microphone in order for you to hear this, but we're going to take a look just in general, just to get you thinking about how you prepare to write any research paper.
A written research paper will serve not only research and writing. 2. Decide on your thesis or others information in a way that is meaningful for you. A well-written research paper will serve not only to reinforce your learning, it could be useful for others as a source of information, reference, and basis for other studies as well. Hence, your paper must be well-written, well-prepared, and well-examined, and it must be submitted on time. Here are guidelines to write your research paper. 1. Determine how much time you have and realistically divide it roughly into several important increments. 5% determining your thesis statement, 5% writing it down, 15% writing an outline of arguments and counterarguments, 25% research, 40% actual writing, and 10% polishing. This is just to give you an idea. You can adjust the time as needed. For example, you may allot more time for research and writing. 2.
A moment. Are you able to hear that?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about point 1, which is making time for your research. When you first chose your subject, what's the next thing that you did? You chose a subject, and then what? How about Summer? What do you do next?
Well, what I've done so far, I chose a subject. Now I went through and researched a few articles, and I read through a few articles. I found one that was mostly is closely related to how I felt with the author that I chose. And then next, I would probably do the more research on my side, and then do some research on the opposing side.
Okay.
To have some backup for me.
Would it be fair to say that right now you're researching using the internet and using Google search? Is that what you've been doing, or is there something else you're doing?
I've used mostly the library, the DeVry
Okay, good.
library. I've done a little bit for the author with Google, and that's as far as I've gotten so far.
Okay, so you're finding information about the author on Google, but the research where you're finding the actual articles are in the library. Is there anybody else that wants to weigh in on what they've been doing so far in step one? They've chosen a topic, and then what?
Professor, I've actually been going to social media to see if I could find anything on there, and there's actually quite a bit. On our Facebook, I'm part of the news, their friends, even on Instagram, there's tons of conversation about the subject, and so I found a lot of information there as well.
Okay, so on social media, what type of social media are you looking at?
Right now, Facebook, Instagram. I don't do Twitter, so right now that's all that I have.
Okay, good. Let's talk about social media for a moment as a resource. It's very good to get a general idea. By the way, somebody needs to mute themselves there. Hang on just a minute. Let me see if I can get rid of that. Okay. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is deciding on your thesis statement. And for that, looking at social media, looking at the library, looking online at various articles, all of that is just getting your feet wet. You're just getting accustomed to the topic itself and what's being said about it. You're maybe even moving into researching the authors to make sure that these are credible sources. That's good. Let's get to the thesis.
The foundation of your research paper. You want it to be solid and strong. Focus your mind on what you want to say. Clarify your idea and encapsulate it in your mind. As much as possible, make it be something you firmly believe in. It will be much easier to write about something you believe in your heart to be true, rather than something you doubt. 3. Write down your thesis statement. Make it succinct, clear, and sure.
The one thing that this video doesn't say is it doesn't say, make sure your thesis answers those two questions. I'm going to say it every week, every time, as much as I can. So what? Who cares? What are you writing about? Why should we care about it? You may have a working thesis. That thesis may change by the time you get to the end of your paper. If you remember, we worked with the upside-down pyramid, and then we worked with the hamburger in an earlier huddle, and then we went to right side the pyramid. All of the introduction, the body, and the conclusion are related. So you might have a working thesis, but then you tend to add things on that the thesis doesn't reflect. Make sure you go and you reflect that in your thesis statement. It's quite all right to have a working thesis and then to change it and refine it. You'll probably find that you do that many times during your writing. You're writing a 5-page paper, so you have a lot of information there.
In the outline, write your introduction to make the reader know why you came up with the thesis. Make the introduction interesting, thought-provoking, and attention-grabbing to draw your teacher and the reader into further reading. Write your outline. Think of arguments to support your thesis and write the ideas out in short sentences. Write as fast as the thoughts occur to you. Imagine you are talking with a friend, convincing him of your point of view, and then write your line of reasoning. Also, Think up of possible rebuttals to your arguments or other points of view and then counter these. Remember, you are writing only the outline, so don't write in paragraphs just yet. Keep items and bullet points and brief. Arrange topics and headings and subheadings as applicable, according to the format prescribed by your teacher. 5. Do your research. This is the usual bottleneck for writers because research can take a long time, especially if you don't know how to work fast and have no idea what you're looking for. This is why it's important to have an outline. Your outline will guide you on specific information you need to find, so you don't have to waste time reading lots of useless material. The usual order of things is to study other materials that have been published on your topic. Since you need to produce your research paper fast, you don't have time to go about it the usual way. To do fast research, go to the library and take out books related to your topic. Scan the table of contents of each book. Find a chapter that seems related to any of the arguments in your outline and go to that chapter. Scan it quickly and pick out relevant information for your reference, including citation information. Read the context of the statement, though, to make sure you're not misquoting the author. If you scan and work fast, you can find references for all your arguments in no time. Don't get caught up reading what doesn't apply to your research. 6. Now it's time to write. Flesh out the points in paragraph form by using your outline as a guide. Let the ideas flow and write freely. Explain each argument in turn and respond to counter-arguments persuasively with facts and data, and with a conclusion supporting your thesis in a convincing way. 7. Edit, edit, edit. Polish up your writing. Make sure the ideas flow smoothly from one paragraph to another and that the presentation of arguments is cohesive. Edit grammar and punctuation. Eliminate excess. Tighten up your thesis statement, introduction, and conclusion. These are the things that will leave a lasting impression.
So, just in general, any questions on how to just begin the research process? Okay. One of the things they talked about at the end was, go back and polish up your thesis. Make sure that that conclusion is adequately reflecting the thesis, that you didn't introduce any new information in the conclusion that you didn't talk about already in your paper. And I saw this to some degree in the papers that you just submitted in week 4, in your rhetorical analysis. I also found, much to my dismay, that many students fail to edit. And I don't say this to be cheeky. I'm your instructor. I'm not your editor. I teach you and I give you the tools that you need to be able to write, but it's up to you to actually take it to the next level and start the editing. So if I've returned your papers to you already, you probably have seen I write a lot of notes in the margins, and there's websites and there's resources in there for you. I'm trying to make it so that you have something to go back to, so when you're writing your final paper here, that you're able to do so and feel confident that you have the tools that you need. So we're done looking at just the general, okay, this is how I research. Now let's talk about this paper specifically. We're not going to actually go to Nearpod. If you've been on any of my huddles before, we've used Nearpod in the past. We're not going to do that this time, but I have some things in Nearpod that I wanted to show you. So the course project. The type of essay is a commentary. If you're lost and you can't get in touch with me and you're just not quite sure, even after engaging in this huddle, what a commentary essay is, go and do some research on Google and just get a sense of what is a commentary as opposed to other types of essays. We'll talk about that today, but you're never alone. As long as you know the type of essay that you are writing, you should feel confident that you could find things about it online. 5 full body pages. This does not include your cover page. It does not include your references page. A couple of the essays that I saw last week did not have the appropriate cover page. I just want to show you. This title page generator at easybib.com is your friend. Okay, you just put the information in here. I just did one before, so I'm going to copy this information here. You need a running head. You don't necessarily need a subtitle. Put your name in there, the institution, and watch this. It creates the title page for you, and then brings it right back into Word, and you're done. Okay? That's a great, and, you know, people ask me, does the word running head have to stay? It does. It has to stay there. That's just the way an APA style paper is. So this is a great tool to use, and if you didn't have the correct title page, I did give you this link, but in case I didn't and you want the link, it's titlepage.easybib.com. So maybe put that safely in your bookmarks. Let's go back to Nearpod. So the course project is going to be 5 full body pages, double-spaced. You need 3 academic resources. So you heard that Summer was using the library. Guess what? We're all going to have to be using the library. Can you use internet research? Yes, you can, but you still need 3 academic resources. So they have to come from a database or books that you find through the library. Next week, we're going to have Mr. Joe Louderback in on our Huddle. He's going to do about 30 minutes or more. He's a librarian. I've worked with him on site and online. He's fantastic. He's got a lot of tools he's going to show you. He's going to answer any questions you have. So it's a really good idea to start your research in earnest this week so that as you come up with questions, he can answer them for you and direct you. So he'll be with us next week. You also need a title page, which I just showed you how to do. That takes seconds to do. And you need a references page. And he's going to show you a tool next week that will do the references page in much the same way I just showed you. Summer, if you could come off speaker for a moment. Were you the one that was using Citation Machine?
Yes.
Okay, how did you find that? Did you, was it helpful?
Yes, I think you introduced it to us in one of the last couple of Huddle sessions.
Yes.
I liked it a lot. It was really easy for me to make my citations or my site for my site page. That's something I've always had a little problem with, and so it was really easy for me to just put in the website and the information. And I also used it to go over my paper for grammatical errors, punctuation errors, things like that.
And you found that helpful?
Yes.
Would it be okay if I showed them the references page on your essay?
That's fine.
Okay. So here she has it, and the only correction that I would make here, okay, is that it's going to be any secondary or tertiary line, right? Fancy word for third. That's going to go in. So you're going to have a left justification on your first line, and then these all go in. So Amber, whoa, I don't know what happened there. So Amber's name would come out, and then this line would go in. But it looks like she's got all the information here beautifully, and she created that with Citation Machine. So DeVry has an even more, what would I call it? It's just got a wider scope. They use a tool called Noodle Tools, and that's what he's going to introduce you to next week. But you can always go to Citation Machine. I do it. I scan things with Citation Machine. When you see me put a citation in on one of the discussions, I'm using Citation Machine. I don't use Noodle Tools because it takes too long for me to get there. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't use it for a long paper. It's just I like to use Citation Machine for something quick. Any questions on that so far?
I have not heard this mentioned. This is something that's always been drilled in my head in the past, that your sites need to be in alphabetical order.
They do. Correct.
I did that, but I just wanted to, in case anybody out there wasn't sure.
And when you use machines like this, it should do it for you. So Well, they even have a title page generator. I didn't know they had one. So a lot of these sites are doing the same thing. But this one will also create the title page for you. So, yeah, you're right. The references all should be in alphabetical order. So let's look at the commentary essay and see why and how this is different from other essays. You might be asked to do persuasive essays, you might be asked to do compare and contrast essay, you might be asked to write a narrative essay, an expository essay. Commentary essay is a little bit different. Writing a commentary means giving your opinion, your interpretation, your insight, your analysis, your explication, your personal reaction, evaluation, or reflection about a concrete detail in an essay. But I will tell you this, as much as it says give your personal opinion or your reflection or an evaluation, I still don't see commentary essays normally written in first person. We talked about that in the week 2 huddle, I believe, and that's on the recording. So the use of I, me, my, personal experiences, none of that, I've not seen that in essays of this type. The commentary is your opinion, but your opinion on a subject that you've researched. So you kind of have to stand in the third person and report about going to Mars or gun control or teachers' salaries, etc. But you're going to do so thinking that this entire paper is my opinion, because I'm only putting in there the statistics and the data and the quoted material with which I agree. And when I look at counter arguments, I'm showing you why those counter arguments are wrong. You don't need to say, in my opinion, I believe, in my estimation. All that does is take away your power as a writer. By putting that in there, you're almost saying, oh, I believe this. It's my belief. I don't want to hurt your feelings, reader. No, this is your paper. This is what you believe. So you state it strongly. And you don't have to put I and me and us and we. Just stand back and tell us the facts. You are commenting on the points you've made. You are writing commentary, which is a higher level of thinking. It requires a different level. It's not just analysis. It's taking something and putting your opinion in there and writing about it and supporting it. It takes a lot of effort to write papers like this.
I have a question.
Sure.
What is the difference between a commentary essay and a persuasive essay?
With a persuasive essay, you want to move somebody to action. That's your whole point to write it. I want to persuade you to get up and do something, or I want to persuade you to think a different way. Right? With a commentary, this is your opinion. This is how you feel about it. You don't necessarily want me to do anything about it as a reader. You just want to state what you believe. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
You're going to use probably persuasive appeals like ethos and logos and pathos. That's why we learned about that. When you're citing someone in your source and you're saying, according to John Doe, who's the president of the CDC or the director of the CDC, you're giving ethos to your paper in much the same way you were doing with the ads, where you said, this looks like Lucille Ball, and she's a Lucille Ball lookalike, and they put her in the ad because it appealed to the ethos that Lucille Ball had during the 50s. She was a credible person. She was believable. It's just like when you see ads today with celebrities, hawking things like hair care. Well, I want my hair to look like Jennifer Aniston's, and since she's in this ad, I'm going to buy this product. You're doing the same thing in your paper. I'm naming this source and telling you who he or she is because I want to add credibility to what I'm stating. So those are persuasive strategies, and I'm not going to say that this isn't partially persuasive. This isn't partially informative. It's very informative. You might even use compare and contrast when you're showing different opinions. But the thrust of your essay is, this is a commentary. This is how I feel about this topic. And I want to show that to you. Let's look at a commentary, and this is really funny, a sports commentary on a date. Okay? So as we're going through this, I'm going to show you bits of the transcript from it. But I want you to think about which part is factual and which part of it is commentary.
Well, the atmosphere here is just electric inside Vito's House of Pasta as the stage is set for something special. A meeting between two sides eager to fulfill their destiny. On the one hand, the away side arrives in top form, full of confidence, while the home side, an apparent no-hoper looking for his first win, will look to shake off those pre-match jitters and seize what just might be the opportunity of a lifetime. Let's see if there's any chemistry at all between these two.
Hi.
Hey, no.
Hi. Jim?
Stacy?
Oh, would you look at that? An absolute firecracker. Blimey, he's outmatched. He might need a stepladder. Mind you, they said David wouldn't have a prayer with Goliath, didn't they?
You look nothing like your profile pictures.
Oh, that could be an own goal. You can't afford to make mistakes like that. Not when the opposition's this fit.
Sorry, that didn't come out right. What I meant is that you look really beautiful.
Ah,
Thanks.
sublime touch that.
Please.
Jim's starting to show a few silky skills now.
Thank you.
And the match is underway here.
Do you ever do your own books? There's an interesting article.
This is like treading through treacle.
Want some?
Cheers.
This day is starting to boil up.
So, you get the point. Fact versus commentary. Well, the atmosphere here is electric inside. Well, of course, obviously, they don't have everything transcribed, so I don't know what kind of house of pasta it was, but it was a house of pasta. And the stage is set for something special, a meeting between two sides, eager to fulfill their destiny. This whole part was said at the very beginning. Is this fact or is this commentary? How about Len? What do you think?
I would say that's fact.
That's fact. You are 100% correct. And this part, obviously, is commentary. He's outmatched. He might need a stepladder. Mind you, they said David wouldn't have a prayer with Goliath. Didn't they look, you don't look like nothing, you don't look anything like you did at your profile pictures. That's what the guy said. But anything that he said, the sports announcer said, relative to how they were interacting, was all commentary. So we can see that difference, and you can hear that difference when you're listening to a sports match, which is pretty funny to do with a dating scenario. So what we have here, and this is probably the most important part of tonight's lesson, is claim, evidence, commentary. That's where you're going to set up your essays and your final project. So let's take a look at this slideshow together. You have to be more aware, especially in a paper that's going to run 5 pages of body paragraphs long. You have to be more aware of your topic sentence. And just as a reminder, it is usually the first sentence in the paragraph. It identifies one aspect of the major thesis and states a primary reason why the major thesis is true. It's expressed as a claim. Okay? So when we say topic sentence in this presentation, we mean claim. You're making a claim about something. So for example, communication between men and women can be complicated because of interaction differences unique to each gender. Okay, you've made a claim. I don't know if that's true. You're just putting that in as your topic sentence, and I'm hoping that in your body paragraph, you're going to explain and prove why this is true. Somebody has a question? No. Context. So you say to yourself, well, in all of my reading, I found resources and I found researchers and people at the top of their field who agree with me that gender influences interactions. Whether you're male or female, you interact differently, you communicate differently. So you want to now use context. You want to figure out who's going to be quoted, what is the context in which the character or the person that you're quoting makes the statement you plan to quote, and make sure the claim and the quote both relate directly to your thesis. So thesis is really important. So let's have an example. You made that claim. Communication between men and women can be complicated because of interaction differences unique to each gender. And then you say Marilyn Sachs, 2005, author of Male-Female Communication Styles, says, we spend 70% of our awake time communicating and 30% of our communication is talking. This here is the context. You made your claim. You have your context. You're telling us that Marilyn Sachs in 2005 published an article, a book, because it's in quotation, italics. She published a book called Male-Female Communication Styles, and you are quoting from that book on page 70. Take a look at that and tell me if you have any questions about what's being done here. Okay. These three dots, I know we call them ... are an actual punctuation mark called an ellipsis. The ellipsis means that you haven't quoted the entire sentence. You've cut part of that sentence out. And this is perfectly okay to do. It's acceptable as long as you're not changing the meaning of the quote. You don't want to cut out words because you want to change the quote. You just need it to fit into your context here with a little bit more ease, so you needed to cut out part of it, or maybe you wanted to condense it. You might see the ellipsis at the beginning, you might see it in the middle, you might see it at the end. And you're using this, again, to wield this quote in a way that it makes sense, so that when you read the sentence, it reads like a sentence. It's smooth. If you ever have to insert words, you'll use brackets, square brackets. Okay, so if you have to insert something in the middle of this, maybe the word verbal communication, you would put it in brackets. You don't use this a lot until you really start writing longer papers. And now you have your commentary. So you've had your claim, you've made your claim in your topic sentence. You've put in the context of your quoted material to show that there's someone that agrees with you, and now you have to write your commentary. You discuss all the ways in which the quote or the paraphrase or whatever you've put in there from your resources and your research shows something about the claim you make in the body of the paragraph. You avoid saying things like, in this quotation, or this quote shows. Again, that takes away your power as a writer. Write commentary that explains how the information you have given reinforces your case. Quotes do not speak for themselves. You don't just throw a quote blindly into your essay. We call that a blind quote. You don't want to do that. You want to introduce it in some way, give it context. Before, in the previous slide, we gave it context by using Marilyn Sachs, using her publication date and the publication name. We gave this context. This is called a signal phrase. So quotes don't speak for themselves. You just don't have them as a sentence. A quote cannot be a sentence, just sitting there with quotation marks around it. You don't just throw it into your essay. I saw this today when I was reading a paper, and the person just started out with a quotation but gave no explanation for it. It was just there, and that's the way they opened their essay, but it didn't relate to the essay itself. So the reader is left thinking, What am I supposed to do with that quote? How does this relate? You never want to have your reader thinking that. You want your reader to accept the quote as evidence that proves your claim, and you must spell out, you the writer, how and why the claim or the quote you've selected supports your argument. Think of this as a general rule. You want to write twice as much commentary as quoted material. So if you have a one-sentence quote, you want at least 2 sentences of commentary. Sometimes I see students piggyback quotes. They put a quote and then it's followed by another quote. And I say, where's your commentary? Where's your explanation? What am I supposed to do with the first quote before I get to the second one? Let's take a look at commentary example. So again, we start with the claim. Communication styles between men and women can be complicated because of interaction differences unique to each gender. Marilyn Sachs, 2005, author of Male-Female Communication Styles, states, we spend 70% of our awake time communicating and 30% of our communication is talking. Obviously, then, good communication between the sexes needs to be established if people are to gain better understanding of one another. For example, women are often thought to listen for listening's sake, whereas often men listen to respond. So you're making sense. That's your commentary. Notice that the writer did not say, in my opinion, or this quote means, or in this explanation from Sachs, just going with it. We're talking about good communication. We're talking about the meaning of this quote. You just start writing your commentary. Before you know it, one line leads to the next. I could imagine that after this sentence, they say something like, for example, women are often thought to listen for listening's sake, whereas men often listen to respond. Listening to respond is a male characteristic because they often want to solve problems. And I could see another quote coming in. According to psychologist Joe Schmo, men have always, and then you'd put in that quote. So once you start writing that commentary, and you explain the quoted material, you explain the paraphrased material, you know, you're going to be writing a lot right after that. That quote should lead you to the next few lines. I know a couple of people, Wes is raising his hand, and a couple of people have joined us. So let's see what questions you have.
Hey, Professor, with the first sentence there, as far as communication between men and women, blah, 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 should that be in parentheses or not?
No, that's just somebody was writing that. That was their opinion. That was their claim, right? So maybe they're writing a paper about, obviously, male and female communication styles. And their first claim is that it's complicated because men and women communicate differently. Well, that's just their opinion. Where's your proof? Right?
Okay.
So then the second sentence, here's where some proof is. What you're saying is, here's, I mean, if we could just kind of do this as a stream of consciousness. Here's what I think. Oh, look, somebody agrees with me. Oh, this is great. I even have statistics. Somebody studied this. So let me make sure I give them the publication information, the date, and the page number in case they want to check my credibility or ethos, right? And oh, look, here I am explaining how this quote really supports what I set up here, right? More questions? I must be very thorough tonight. I said before that we contextualize quotes. We don't just put a quote in. For example, we can't just use this as a sentence right here and put a period, like start with a capital W and end right here. I want you to note a couple of things, right? If you use an ellipsis to leave out words, make sure you have spaces between them, okay? It's a punctuation mark. It's like telling me, I could write a period, but I put it on the top instead of the bottom. Well, that's wrong. You know, or I use an upside down exclamation point. Well, that's wrong. So putting those 3 dots together is wrong. Okay, it's dot, space, dot, space, dot. That's first. Secondly, I want you to look at the punctuation around here. right? Some people put the period here and a period here. No, your sentence ends here, so the period goes here. Your quotation mark ends here. We also call this a signal phrase, right? Marilyn Sachs states, and then we put a comma, and you put in her quote. What you're saying is, Marilyn Sachs states, using a verb, this. If you write Marilyn Sachs states that, if you put a that right here, no quotation mark. Only if this is a verb that precedes the introduction. These are little things, minor things. Are these things that are going to fail your paper? Absolutely not. But they're things you should know, and you should start practicing those habits. So if you introduce with a signal phrase and you have a verb here, you're going to put a quote in. If you put that, you don't put a comma, rather. If you intend to use signal phrases, you don't always have to say so-and-so states. You could try other things. So-and-so argues, so-and-so points out, declares, acknowledges, insists. You can look up, there's tons of verbs that you can use that mean states or says. You don't always have to do that. With all that being said, there are two other ways to put a quote in your paper. And I want to make this differentiation. Some people say, even among instructors, there's no real agreement. Do you like quoted material or paraphrased material? Let me tell you the difference. Paraphrase, summary, quote. A summary is when you take something that was said and you condense it to about a third of the original, and you put it in your own words. But you still attribute that idea to the original author, but you've summarized it. So you'd have to put parenthetical citations in. You'd have to write in some way who that author was. When you paraphrase, you're leaving it the same length, but you're putting it in your own words and you're attributing it to the author. When you put a quote in, you're saying this is the word-for-word information I got from that author. I prefer to use, in my own papers, I use mostly quoting. I like that. I think it gives resonance. It gives breadth and depth to the paper. It shows that I understood the argument that was being made by Marilyn Sachs, and I'm using it in my paper to support what I'm saying. So there's different ways to do this. The first way was a signal phrase. The second way is called a weave. This is a little more sophisticated because you really have to think. A weave is when you're writing and then the quote comes in without a signal. It comes in and you signal it at the end. You say you attribute it right here at the end. So it's the same sentence. Communication between men and women can be complicated because of interaction differences unique to each gender. So it is vital to improve our mutual communication skills since we spend 70% of our awake time communicating and 30% of our communication is talking. So you've woven into your sentence the quote. And then you would put Sachs, the year of publication, and the page number at the end. If you had omitted this, what you have is plagiarism. You took somebody's idea and you just didn't attribute it to them. And then you do your talking. Your commentary comes down here. So you're still doing commentary. You're still getting the quote in, but you've woven it into the fabric of your paragraph. Any questions on the weave? I'm not going to lie, this is harder to do. If I was not a strong writer, I would stick to all signal phrases and maybe try this once. If you haven't written in a long time, there's no right or wrong. I don't sit and say, well, Wes only used one weave, so I'm going to take off 10 points. No, you don't have to use it ever. If you like signal phrasing, that's fine. If you like naming the author up front, so-and-so says, and that's what you can do, as long as you cite it correctly, that's what I'm concerned with. So the weave is the second way to put a quoted material in your paper. The third way is called a full sentence introduction. Same old thing. Communication between men and women can be complicated because of interaction differences unique to each gender. Colon, full sentence. 70% of our awake time is communicating and 30% of our communication is talking. Both of these are sentences that could stand alone. I separate them with a colon. I put my ellipsis in and I cited my source. And then down here is the commentary. So these are 3 different ways to put your quoted material in a paper. So let me ask you, see who's on the call here, because I know a bunch of people came in late. Crystal, if you would unmute for a moment.
Yes.
What was new to you in what I just showed in this PowerPoint?
The weaving, I've read it before. I've just never paid attention that it was a different type of way to cite things or quote things.
Okay, good. How about Jessica? Anything new to you?
There we go. Sorry, my computer was tired. The weave was actually new to me, but like Crystal said, I wasn't aware. Brittany was saying, had a good question, that she has 2 different classes that she writes things with, and the way that you're saying that is accepted both ways, the weaving and the actual quotation or the paraphrasing, one of the professors doesn't accept the one. So how do you know which one to write?
What doesn't he accept and why?
Which one? Oh, the like the cutting and pasting of stuff, and using it like that.
Oh, he doesn't want quoted material. Is that what it is?
Is that what it is? Yes, that's what it is. She wants them to paraphrase everything.
Yeah, I never understood that. And by the way, Wes, I saw your question. I'll go back in a second. I never understood that, because a good paper will probably have a little bit of all of it. So I don't know what the professor's asking and why. It would be interesting to ask why. Maybe Brittany.
That was my question, that which way would be the right way, but if you're saying they're both, then okay.
They're all valid. I mean, I don't see how the only way you would invalidate any of these is by taking the quote and then trying to pass it off as your own.
Right.
That would just come off as plagiarism. But
yeah, I was thinking, but I don't know.
The problem that students make, let's just pretend for a minute that this was your paragraph. Let's just say this was your paragraph. What they'll do is they'll attribute at the end, like they'll write Smith, 2005, page 20. And then you'll see them do this again in the next paragraph, and then the next paragraph. And then my question is, so which part of it is yours? Like, isn't any of this idea yours? Like if you're just quoting if you're attributing, let's call this an attribution or an in-text citation or parenthetical citation. They're called all of these things, right? If you're attributing it, every paragraph you write to someone else, then where is your idea?
Right.
You understand?
Yeah, I get that.
I'm not sure. I'd love for Brittany to tell us maybe next week if she talks to the professor why they're only paraphrasing. I don't even know.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. I feel like she's in the class with us.
She does sit here with me, so yeah.
That's great. That's great. Wes, you wanted to see example number 1, correct? Wes?
Yes, ma'am. I was just wondering in the difference of the citations, how they noted in the parenthetical. Yeah, see the page 70 there?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do that on the next 2 or 3. They got a bit more in detail with that citation.
But the citation is still there. Here's page 70 still, right? Here's Maryland, right? So let's look at the second one. You're talking about the weave, right? So right. The weave, you still have it, but it's at the end. Right?
Okay.
So what happens is when you're writing a paper, what's going through your mind is you go, let's say you were just using Sachs, that was your only source, and you say Marilyn Sachs says, and Marilyn Sachs notes, and Marilyn Sachs argues, and you're putting all your quotes in there. And you say, I am so sick and tired of saying Marilyn Sachs says. Isn't there another way to do this? And that's when you reach for the weave. And the weave takes a lot of thought. You're going to put Sachs and the 2005 in the page in, but it comes at the end of the quote. You're not naming her up here. You're not interrupting the sentence. You understand? The sentences run together. Okay, Wes says. And the same thing with the full sentence introduction. I just want to be clear. You're still getting that citation information in there. Any other questions? Len?
I'm sorry, Professor. Is this slideshow, can it be made available to us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And of course the recording will be available too, but I will post the slideshow in the files and I'll let you know. It's hard to understand New Yorkers, says. Len, you had a question.
All right, so on the first example, with the citation, we've seen that it actually had, if I'm not mistaken anyway, the source of it, the book.
Yeah.
Correct?
Right, that's right.
In the other examples, it just said Sachs, 2005. So how do we know the publication that we're citing, the reader anyway, would know the publication that we're citing out of?
Because they're going to look at your references page.
Ah.
And that's where it's going to be. So that's a great reminder, is that if I could pull back this summer, this should have said references, by the way, up here, but called it a works cited page. That's an MLA expression. For APA, it's a references page. If she quoted, for example, from Amber Carlin's, it should be last name first. I have a feeling Carlin's is the last name. But in any event, if she did quote from this, we should see the in-text citation in her paper, and it would correlate down here. What we basically need to know in any APA citation is who the author is and what year did they publish. If you have a page number, you put it in. But let's say I read this online. There would be no page number, and that's okay. As long as I know it's Sachs 2005, I'm going to go to your references page, and I should see Sachs's name and all the information. What she published, the name of the publication, the year, who published it, or where I could find it online. And that's where next week's Huddle is going to be really important, when he shows you how to use and leverage Noodle tools that will do all that work for you. And I'm glad that Summer was using Citation Machine to do that as well. There's a bunch of different tools to use, but you don't have to commit this to memory. Now, why did I put...
Could you cite the same way in this first quote as you did in the other two quotes?
What do you mean, could I cite the same way?
Guys, go ahead. Can I just go ahead and write well, you're doing the same thing as a weave, I guess. Okay, never mind.
No, I mean, this is, until you're sitting there doing it, when you have that article printed out or saved on your laptop and you're sitting and writing the paper, and you're going to make decisions. Len asks a good question. Why did I put that in there? I felt like it. It's nice. I'm contextualizing who she is, right? I'm telling you what she wrote. Is it necessary? No, really, all that's necessary is this. Right? I have the last name. I have the year. I put the page number in because I had the book in my hand, and I knew what pages came from. If I was reading it online, this would go too. And look, this goes here, and that's where my sentence ends. This is all that's necessary. Okay? You want to be a show-off, and it takes up more room too. Right? Hey, look at that. Why wouldn't we do it here? Because it's not a signal phrase. A signal phrase allows you to do all this. The other way, you're just kind of weaving the quote in and telling me at the end who said the quote. Len, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Good. Now, you might say, how did you even know to put the P in there? I didn't. You know what I did? I don't memorize this. Okay? I have something saved here. Here's what I did. I went to the Purdue Owl online. This should be your Bible, because if you don't have, and I can put this up for you as a link, right? If you don't have a book that says, if you don't have the APA book that says, here's the guidelines, you're not going to know what to do. So the Purdue Owl is like preeminent. You know, in English circles, when we talk about a go-to site, this is our go-to site. So I say, okay, here's an in-text citations. This tells me what the basics are, right? And then they have in-text citations, author and authors, and it shows you the different ways you can do this. So it tells you just basically for a short quotation, here's what you need to do. And you see this is very similar to what we did with Sachs. According to Jones, again, if you want to get fancy, you would tell us what Jones wrote. But according to Jones, 1998, boom, you put in the quote, and here's the page, 199. And then they show you a different way. Jones, 1998, found out students had difficulties, page 99, and then they went on to explain or ask a question afterwards. So it's just showing you the different styles, right? What if you have a long quotation and says, well, if you have 40 words or longer of a quote, you need to quote this way. So these are all your rules. Well, what if I'm summarizing or paraphrasing, like Brittany's fiance? Well, this tells you, Jessica's fiance. This tells you how to do that. Here's how you cite if you're paraphrasing or summarizing information. Then if I go back here and I say, okay, how do I do my in-text citations? Well, you can see what my mind is here. Hold on. And now it's thinking. The owl has failed us. Okay. What if I am citing more than one author? How do I get this in? What do I put in the parentheses? What if I have 3 to 5 authors, 6 or more authors? What if the author is unknown? This came up in one of the discussions that when you're citing, Marie, are you on the line? No. Sorry. Marie, were you the one that asked about unknown authors when you're citing something online?
Yes.
In the discussions, right? So she asked a good question. Like when you're online, many times you don't know who the author is. Well, what do I do in that case if I find good information but there's no author, and it tells you what to do in that case? What if you're using an organization as an author? You went to the Centers for Disease Control and found something, and you'd like to use that page. Then how do I cite it? How do I get it into my paper? What do I say? What do I put in parentheses? So this is pretty much going to answer all your questions. And I can tell you, and I have 2 degrees in English, I don't have any of this memorized. I kind of know, but I always have to look back. If I'm unsure, and I've said this before, I go to Citation Machine, and it's loading, but it's slow. And while we're waiting for that to load, I just want to copy. Oh, just went away. Here's another way. I take the easy way out. So let that load. I lost my Purdue OWL. I just want to show you something in Citation Machine. And again, Joe Louderback will show us next week how to do this with Noodle tools, but in the meantime, we can use Citation Machine as just a shortcut. I'm sorry this is taking so long. I can't explain it. Okay. So if I want to create a citation or I just want to know how to do a quick in-text citation, I click on Create Citations. Okay. I click on APA. I have no idea why this is so slow. It's maddening. Okay, so let's say I was at the DeVry website and I wanted to quote something from DeVry. I click on website. I wait an hour and maybe it turns over. There's an autofill mode and a manual mode. So if you have the website that you'd like to put in here, see if I have anything saved. All right, here's one actually. We'll try the DeVry website. I already have a bibliography saved, when I play with this and I do things with it. So maybe it'll just be faster if I show you that. But you would put the website in there and it would generate all the information for you. And it would create this ongoing bibliography for you. And I think the one I did most recently was actually for Jessica. I cited some of the things that she was quoting from. Right now, I don't know if I have the, I don't know if I have the patience for this because it's really, really slow. And I don't know why. It's usually not. I put DeVry in there. I searched for the website. It gives me selections. I select the one I want. And then it will put in all the information and create this for you. And even tell you how to do the in-text citation or the parenthetical citation. So that's what I use. And I would suggest, right now it's very slow. My internet is very, very slow. But I suggest that you look in that as well. So that's pretty much where we stand. If you can, I will make the PowerPoint available to you, and you know that you have to use quoted material, or you should be using it. You can choose to paraphrase, you can choose to summarize, but go back through last week's Huddle session where we talked about how you can possibly be plagiarizing without knowing it. We talked about the different types of plagiarism resources and types. You want to also think about when you're writing, and I said this last week, Do your research. Read, read, read. Read as much as you can. Become familiar with your topic, so much so that you could sit down and write a paper about that. And that pretty much is your commentary. Then you go back and you find those quotes that help to support what you're saying. If you do that and you don't get led by the quoted material, you will have the commentary already written because you know what you want to say about going to Mars or gun control or teacher salaries. You already know that because you have read about it. That's your general knowledge. And I know we're talking this week about general knowledge versus specific knowledge. Anything you can pretty much get in a reference book is general knowledge. Telling me that the United States is in the Western Hemisphere, general knowledge. You know, you don't have to cite that even if you read it in an atlas, you know, because that's a reference book. Telling me that Lucille Ball had red hair, general knowledge. Even if you had read that line, Lucille Ball had red hair. So you have to distinguish between, yeah, I don't know much about gun control going into this commentary that I'm going to be writing, but I'm reading about it and I'm learning about it. And when you can sit down without that research and write your paper, you're pretty much writing the commentary already. Any questions? I hope that today you took away some things that you didn't know before and you feel confident about using quoted material in your paper. And I look forward to reading your ideas this week. If you attended this call, you only have to post twice to each discussion. If you have any questions that are particular to your topic, let me know. And again, if you can come next week with the librarian here, he will help you out as well. So if you're done with me, we're done and another successful huddle. Have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.